Hello, I'm Tonia Pyle. Welcome to Ridgecrest Talk. Our guest today is Sheriff Donny Youngblood. Thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure.
All right, so I have been wanting to catch up with you and talk to you about the most recent national event concerning Benjamin Ashley and that sad affair. A couple deputies were hurt.
Well,
were they deputies?
Both were deputies. One was seriously injured, and he's not back to work, and time will tell. He actually took a round into the shoulder that went down and exited the elbow, and the other round lodged in his wrist, and that was a .44 caliber round. So a lot of damage, a lot of nerve damage. He's been going through a lot of rehab. But Deputy Booker is a special type of guy, and if anybody can make it back, it will be him.
Very good. All right. And so these were shots by Mr. Ashley.
That is correct. Yes.
So then, and he covered a wide, a vast territory.
We had 100 square mile perimeter, and that's probably as large as you'll ever see because. We had to keep him contained. There's so many hiding places up there. There's caves. There's trailers that are empty. There's weekend homes. Just a number of places that he could have hidden. And so we threw everything at it, including the federal government and some technology that really is high tech. And we were on it 24 hours a day. And I made a commitment that we were going to stay on it until we got him, or we were convinced that he was out of our perimeter.
And so then, lo and behold, right here in Yokern, someone recognized him.
We weren't surprised that he landed in Ridgecrest and Yokern because if you look at his history, it showed that he was the type of person that was on foot all the time. He wrecked 2 vehicles during disabled them during this hunt on good roads. One of them got stuck on a perfectly good road, which told us he didn't know how to drive. And he had been on the Pacific Crest Trail before. He'd been sighted in Yosemite for camping where he should not have been. So we had a kind of a profile of what he was probably going to be like and where he most likely would try and migrate to, which was the Pacific Crest Trail. And ultimately, that's exactly where he went. We believe that he either came off the Pacific Crest Trail or came from Ridgecrest. There's information he may have been in Yokern at one point. But he was headed back to the Pacific Crest Trail. We're convinced of that.
So now I wouldn't have assumed that it meant he couldn't drive. I would have thought maybe drugs or something. Was that part of
Well, if you look at he was cited once in Yosemite for camping in a place that he shouldn't be, illegal camping.
Okay.
That's right off the Pacific Crest Trail, which tells us that he's frequented that, and that would be his most knowledge. So. You kind of profile the activities as you go along. Most people could not survive at 100-degree temperature and hike the way he did. Our SWAT team and Border Patrol and U.S. Marshals, they were on that ground, and it was tough, very tough.
I heard you say it. Some of it was in his socks, and some of it was in flip-flops.
He changed shoes on us, and he came up with a pair of flip-flops that we didn't know that he had. But we think that he probably got those off of one of the illegal marijuana grows up there.
Very interesting. So that makes me think about the recent release of the 600 prisoners. Do you know anything about where they are from, or?
Well, there's two types of releases. You have the federal government releasing federal inmates, but that number is around 7,000 last week. Those are allegedly low-level prisoners. But to get to federal prison, you have to be an overachiever. To get to any prison, state or federal, you have to be an overachiever. It's not your first time through unless it's a heinous crime. You've committed these crimes over and over again. So these inmates that are being released, whether it be from state or from federal, if they're being released early, they're not marijuana smokers. That's what you will.
That's what I would have thought.
That's what you would get sold, is that these are just people that were possessed marijuana and they're in state prison. There is no one in state prison for possession of marijuana unless it's a multi-pound incident with sales.
A big dollar value.
But because somebody had an ounce of marijuana, there are none of those in prison, federal or state.
Okay. So these people are robbery and
There's,
things of...
and you know, you can commit a robbery or a burglary, and the first time you're not going to prison.
Okay.
You're just not.
Okay.
You get through the probation, the local probation. You go through the local courts, and you get several bites at the apple. And finally, the judge looks at your record and says that's enough, and you wind up in prison. But now, with Prop 47, possession of methamphetamine, possession of heroin, possession of GHB, the date rape drug, and theft of anything under $950, including handguns, are all misdemeanors. We're the only state in the union that those crimes are misdemeanors now. People that use meth and people that use heroin are also thieves because they have to pay for that
Sure.
addiction that they have. So I think you'll see that population come back around.
So what's your reaction to this release?
I think I can't. The Prop 47, I have to blame on us
The voters?
because we voted for it. But the title and summary of Prop 47 was titled "Safe Schools and Safe Neighborhoods." Who doesn't want that? And so I think people read that and said, "Oh, of course I want that," and voted yes. When in fact, in my opinion, it had nothing to do with safe schools and safe neighborhoods.
You know, we just had Linda Payne here, who's with the Election Integrity Project, and so she's working to get fraud down out of the voting system to make sure that how people vote is true to people's votes. So maybe you don't have to blame us yet. Maybe it was somebody.
Well, it wasn't the people of Kern County. I'll tell you that.
I think you're probably right.
We Prop 47 failed in Kern County
One way
by
or the other.
by a large number. But when we're controlled in California by the voters in San Francisco and the voters in Los Angeles, and those are liberal groups that control our state. Kern County just happens to be in the wrong state. We belong in Arizona because we're so conservative.
Well, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Okay.
Thank you. Welcome back to Ridgecrest Talk with Sheriff Donny Youngblood. And we were talking about prisoners being released early and things of that nature. I wanted to ask about how many in our system, do you have any statistics on illegal immigrants in our system, and what happens to them if they're part of the release?
Well, first of all, we don't track the number of illegals in the jail.
Oh.
And the reason we don't is because if you're arrested on a state crime, it doesn't matter to us if you're in the country legally or illegally. We don't want you deported until you have faced the music on the crime that you committed, because a few years ago, we used to call Border Patrol. They would come and get just someone that was in the country illegally and take them back to Mexico. And as a patrolman, that might occur on Tuesday. And by Friday, I'd be dealing with the same person again. So there was no purpose. If someone commits a bad crime, to deport them is just going to put them back on our streets. So they have to face the music. But what I do know is that we ask where they were born. And right now, out of 2,400 inmates, about 220 are foreign-born inmates. Now, they might be citizens, they might be here illegally, but that's about the only number that we track. Now, with immigration, we've had this problem with the ACLU is always on guard for us in the immigration issue, and it became a real issue. We have what was called a 48-hour detainer. The ICE immigration custom agents would ask us to place a 48-hour hold on an inmate that they wanted to deport. We would then hold them for 48 hours after their release date for ICE to come and get them. And then these lawsuits started occurring, one up in Oregon, and it was the federal court up there ruled that it's unconstitutional to hold them without a judicial review. In other words, you're holding someone, even though they're illegal, in your jail for 48 hours and there's been no judicial review. So that kind of caused us a real issue because you're going to get sued and you're going to lose if you continue to do that. So we stopped doing that for a very short period of time. I had a meeting with the ICE agents, and they literally asked me what I needed from them. And I said, here's what I'm willing to do. I will give you office space in my jail. I'll give you access to our computers. You assign an agent there. You can do the research and you can deport whoever you want. And that way, we're not the immigration agent. You are, and that's the way it ought to be. So I have ICE agents in my jail right now, and didn't make the ACLU all that happy, which means it must be successful.
Okay, so and then now, as far as how the turn of events is going with law enforcement, we see so much in the news now with you're the bad guy, and you know, I grew up with these are our heroes, our protectors, and that's being turned.
Well, first of all, there's a very small minority of people out there that are making all this noise. They're being allowed by liberal media to be given a voice. In fact, I think the President of the United States has given them a voice after the Ferguson incident, and the way he handled that, the way the Attorney General at the time, Eric Holder, handled that, certainly empowered these people. But at the end of the day, if you look at all the incidents that have been on there, not all of them are bad. I mean, but the ones that the media has focused on, there's been a handful. We have in this country over 1 million contacts a day with law enforcement in the communities that they serve, and they almost all go well. You can single out these groups here because of the technology, video. Everyone has a video today. I have a camera right here. You have a camera. Everybody that's watching this show has a camera.
Right.
And what's happened is use of force for the first time has been brought into your living rooms. And I didn't say excessive force, I said use of force.
It's not pretty.
No, anytime that you have to use a baton or a taser to effect an arrest, it's not pretty. And if you've never seen it before, your first reaction is, look what they're doing to that guy. But you don't know what caused that to happen, because when I tell someone you're under arrest, you're obligated to comply. I have the power with the job that I have to take you into custody for the crime that I believe that you just committed. If you refuse to go, I have to up the ante, and I have to use whatever force necessary to effect that arrest. The power is all yours. So all these cases that we've seen, what would have happened? Number one, if there had been no meth on board, most of them have meth, but what would have happened had they complied with the officers? None of those would have occurred. None of those. So let's don't blame the officers for all these incidents of use of force. Now, that's not to say that officers sometimes don't do bad things.
I was just going to ask you, do you have statistics on how many officers you've had to discipline? Or?
Well, I can tell you that in my 10 years almost as a sheriff, I think I've terminated 50 deputies for cause. Now that can be for any number of things. Can be for personal conduct off duty that's not becoming to the office. It could be for crimes. It could be we've had a handful of drug use employees. No one's exempt from this drug epidemic. No one. If it hasn't touched your audience yet, it will at some point.
It has,
and so. But we can't just focus on all cops are bad.
Right.
99.9% of them are out there to serve the community, and that's what we get paid to do.
Well, we're getting ready to take a quick break, and we'll come back, and I want to talk about recruitment and staffing issues. Thank you. Welcome back to Ridgecrest Talk with Sheriff Donny Youngblood, and we were talking about some of the issues with, with disciplining officers or things of that nature, but overall with sort of the whole national flip toward law enforcement, sort of being anti-law enforcement, it seems, that I'm wondering how a lot of these issues are affecting your recruiting process.
Well, we're starting to feel the impact because, first of all, there's never been a more difficult time to be a young police officer in our country than today. You have people putting this in your face, saying, "I'm filming you, I'm filming you, I'm filming you. How do you like that?" Very disrespectful. That's legal for people to do that, and you have to be able to just block that out. People, to be young and to be in this profession you have to get thick skin really, really quickly. And, you know, our guys and gals do a really, really good job of being able to do that. But the technology change has been the biggest that we've seen
Yes.
in our history. And we're going to find that recruiting and retaining is going to be difficult. In Kern County, we don't have the best weather. We don't have the highest pay. We don't have the LA community or Ventura or Santa Barbara that along the beach. So it's difficult anyway, and now it's going to become even more difficult.
Because of the heat.
We're losing 25 deputies to various agencies as we speak throughout the state of California.
Well, is that just because of the heat or those conditions they would prefer to live at Pismo Beach?
There's a lot of reasons. Some of them
Okay.
came from other areas. When you come to work for the sheriff's office, you have to go to work in the jail for a couple of years. If you go to work for Ventura Police Department, they don't have a jail, so you go right to patrol. So it's a combination of a lot of things. But we're trying some new tactics to recruit. We want to make it, you know, in Kern County, every deputy sheriff has their own, that's on patrol somewhere, has their own patrol car. So the deputies that work in Ridgecrest that live in Bakersfield, I allow them to drive their car, their patrol car from Bakersfield to here. They go to work. When they get through, they drive their patrol car home. That's a really nice benefit for them with fuel, wear and tear on their car,
Sure.
and they're very appreciative of that because the young guys that make the least amount of money, young guys and gals, tend to go to the outlying substations first. So it's a very successful program.
Well, you've been a sheriff for what, 39 years? You've obviously loved your job, your
I still do,
work.
yeah.
And what do you love most about it?
You know, when you have an interaction with people, and during that interaction, you learn that you've had an impact on their life or somebody else's life. I just had this conversation with a lieutenant that was retiring yesterday. He's going to work for the state of California, and he's had a significant impact in our jail programs with inmates and rehabilitation programs trying to reduce the recidivism rate. And Lieutenant Greg Gonzalez has been fantastic in doing that. And with the employees that work for him, he's been fantastic. And I told him yesterday, I said, you know, the ultimate compliment for you is you've had an impact on some of these inmates' lives. You made them, help them change their lives. And some of them aren't going to come back because of you. And the employees that work for you have been impacted by you. There's not a better compliment for a police officer than that.
Right, right. So, then let's see. So, there's your staffing. I mean, maybe somebody watching will want to sign up or call.
We have a very difficult time recruiting African Americans, and I don't know if it's because of peer pressure, but
Okay,
it's
'cause of the
very,
stigma, 'cause
very,
there's-
very difficult.
with law enforcement.
Hispanics, we're 35% Hispanic, and we have a lot of females. My undersheriff is a female who started 35 years ago as a typist clerk, and she's now second in charge of the sheriff's office, and she's getting ready to retire. And you know, I hate her for that, but I have a bureau chief who's a female, so we're really diverse. Except for African Americans, and we're working on how we can do a better job
Attract.
of recruiting. Yes.
Okay. Well, now you were talking about cameras earlier, and I'm remembering that you got that big grant and you
Yeah.
got the body cameras. Was that sort of was that something you applied, or you just?
We
did that happen?
got a grant because the body cameras are the big push
Right.
throughout law enforcement, and the liberal people that wanted us to have body cameras thought we were going to rebel and reject. We think it's a great idea.
Okay.
We think body cameras are going to show that we're telling the truth about what's occurring out there.
About how ugly people can be.
Yes, because what you see sometimes is the end of an incident, not what led up to it, and it's important. So we applied for a grant. And Wasco is a contract city. They're like Ridgecrest. They are an incorporated city, but they don't have their own police department. They contract with the sheriff for police services.
Okay.
And so we got the grant, and when those 17 deputies are now equipped with body cameras. But with body cameras comes a good policy that you have to have. You have to store the data, which is very expensive. Some companies store it in the cloud, some store it in all these different locations, but it's very expensive. And then you get the same group of people that demanded that you have body cameras filing these Public Records Act for all your videos, which cost a lot of money to
Produce.
Yes.
for-
And so it's just a difficult time. But it's a good thing. The cameras already in Wasco have already shown that the officers are doing a superb job. And, you know, we have, right now we have one where the gentleman was suicidal and the officers with a body cam ultimately gets him into a position where they can grab him and keep him from killing himself. That's, you know, that's, if without that camera, I could tell you the story, it wouldn't have the impact. But when you see the video, it's very impactful.
Right. So with maybe some of the unattractive movies, maybe you can have some ammunition to come back with some movies of your own that tell a very different story.
That's exactly right.
That would be nice.
Yep.
What about budget?
You know, the oil downturn for our county really impacted our county. And the property taxes, you know, everything's down in Kern. And so we are now starting to recover from the horrible recession that we went through in the country. But Kern got hit particularly hard. And we're now starting to recover, but it's a 2 or 3 year lag time to recover when because people were laid off from the oil fields. And when they start hiring them back, then you start getting the more taxes that they pay. They start spending money because they're employed again, and so it's a tough situation. But you know, budgets. I've been in this business for almost 40 years now, and it's a round world. And the budget will come back. We will manage it the best that we can until it does.
So let's talk a little bit about the concealed weapons.
My favorite topic.
Okay, so the licenses, you support the licenses for Kern County?
First of all, when I ran for sheriff 9 years ago, the number one question throughout Kern County, it got to be when I went to a forum to campaign, I would start my talk with, I'm in favor of CCWs, so that they didn't have to ask, because that's the number one question. Our Second Amendment rights are more important to people in Kern County than they are probably anywhere in the country. You know, we believe in the Second Amendment. We believe in the right to bear arms. And in Kern right now, we're at 7,220 concealed weapons permits.
Okay.
And I think Fresno County's right there with us. Sheriff Mims, Margaret Mims, as she and I see this together. And you know, if you have a good reason, and you know, you have to make up the reason and submit it, and you don't have a record, by and large, you're going to get a gun permit in this county. You have to go through some training, and you have to go through a background. But I believe that people ought to have a right to protect themselves, and so that's really important to me.
Well, I know that our station manager, Mr. Tom Wicknick, want to thank you so much for your support for the concealed carry.
He does. I've known Tom since I first started running for sheriff out here, and he's a character.
Well, I want to thank you so much for joining us here today on Ridgecrest Talk.
Absolutely my pleasure.
Thank you.
You know,